Hi y'all, I'm Jambalaya with Stubby Stampers. Over on our creative team, our challenge for August was to make a monochromatic card. And I gotta tell you, making monochromatic cards is hard. You have to stay all in one color family. So I pulled out a bunch of brown cardstocks. I had this card kind of roaming around in my head for a while. And I want to show you a couple of cool techniques I used on it. I'll put all the measurements of these layers on the class page. Okay, I stamped the sentiment first. Up in the upper right hand corner. And then, now that we know where the sentiment is, we're going to take the dandelion fluff and ink it up real good with Versamark ink. And then stamp that down. Now I use a coffee filter to catch my embossing powder. You just want to make sure all your excess embossing powder is off of it. Give it a good flick. Set that aside. Put your embossing powder back in your jar. See how well this works? Now you would emboss this with a heat gun, but through the magic of television, I've already done that. Now we're going to take a light brown ink. This is Toffee Crunch Memento. And you're just going to start sponging your ink right around the edges. This is called Heat Emboss Resist, because your clear ink, your clear embossing is resisting the ink. Isn't that gorgeous? Look at those details come out. Then you're going to take a Kleenex and wipe off the excess ink. And you see how the image just comes forward? Now, of course, I'm going to make all the edges match. I want just a little bit more shading around that flower. Well, it's not really a flower, it's a seed. Whatever. Okay, then we have an A2 card base. That would be pretty just like that. Or we could do some layers, which is what I opted to do. Now, this looked a little dull to me, and I couldn't add another color in. So I took a darker ink, this is Rich Cocoa Memento, and just very lightly drag the pad over the whole surface, and it brings out that embossing so nice. Now you really only have to worry about the edges because the center is going to be covered up. But since I don't like to waste anything, I'm going to take a punch and punch a piece out of that layer. Since it's going to be all covered up, we might as well get a little piece to work on something else. I'll save that for another project. I just saw a spot I missed. Okay, so then we're going to layer this up. And you see how the paper is kind of warped from the embossing? That's all going to lay down just fine once you get enough adhesive on it. And because this is also embossed, this is dry embossed, this is heat embossed. But when we go to lay down our adhesive, let's get this centered. Make sure you have on the back of this, you have a good amount of adhesive right as close to the edge as you can get. And do all four sides to make that unruly paper behave itself. Get this as centered as you can. Now I'll show you another little trick. When you want to make adhesive work, you have to rub it good and hard. So you want to turn this over so you're not rubbing directly onto your embossing. Adhesive doesn't work all by itself. You have to make it work. Okay, now we're going to put adhesive on this, again, as close to the edge as possible. And I'm going to center that as good as I can. Rub it down. turn it over, and rub it good and hard. And there we have a quick card that used two very cool techniques. You have the ink dragging on the embossing, and the heat embossing with the ink around it. Happy stamping!